visitor? Which hotels has this person viewed in the past? Websites collect this kind of information by placing small files known as cookies on a person's computer. In the case of Orbitz, Mac and PC users were actually given the same choices. However, they appeared in different orders. For Mac users, the higher-priced hotels showed up higher in the search results. Orbitz says 90% of its users book a hotel that appears on the first page, and mostly in the top 5 listings. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter.
VOA Special English Technology Report. Falling prices are fueling growth in high-speed internet services, especially in developing countries. Recently, the International Telecommunication Union released its Measuring the Information Society 2011 report. The ITU, part of the United Nations, compared access, use, and skills in 152 countries. The report says South Korea has the world's most developed economy in information and communication technology, or ICT. Sweden, Iceland, Denmark, and Finland were also among the top 5 in the ICT Development Index. The index compares 2008 and 2010 scores. Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Vietnam, and Russia had some of the biggest improvements between those years. Susan Teltscher is head of the ICT Data and Statistics Division at the International Telecommunication Union in Switzerland. She says most of the growth has come from one source. Mobile broadband is now leading the growth race among the different ICT indicators, much higher than the other key indicators that we look at, like regular mobile phone subscriptions, fixed telephone, or fixed broadband. And the good news is that it's also starting to grow in developing countries. Mobile broadband subscriptions reached 872 million by the end of last year. 300 million of those are in developing countries. Ms. Teltscher says, if we can bring internet over the mobile phones, then we can really make a difference in terms of improving internet access also in developing countries. Falling prices are adding to the growth, she says, especially in the broadband area. The prices dropped by over 50% between 2008 and 2010, which is a very encouraging finding because this was primarily drops in the developing countries. Even so, the report says people in many low-income countries are still paying too much for high-speed internet connections. In Africa, broadband service for a home or office cost almost 3 times an average monthly income last year. That was down from 6.5 times as much in 2008. Also, there are big differences in broadband speed and quality from country to country. South Korea has Asia's 4th largest economy. Susan Teltscher says, if you look at what they have been achieving in terms of ICT development, it's actually higher than what you would expect given their national income. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning
Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Internet activists and human rights groups are criticizing an order that requires blogs and social media sites in Vietnam to share personal information only. The order aims to ban social media users and bloggers from posting other information such as news stories. Local media reports say the decree states that such sites are not permitted to, quote, gather or summarize information from press organizations or government websites. Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dong approved Decree 72 in July. Internet activists say this is an attempt by the communist government to restrict freedom of speech. Rights groups say the decree's requirements are too broad and will be used to act against government critics. Others criticized a statement by Lê Nam Thang, the Deputy Minister of Information and Communications. State media reported him as saying that the law aims to help web users find correct and clean information on the internet. But one blogger says that is a matter of personal choice. She says people should be able to decide for themselves whether information is good or bad. And she says Vietnamese citizens do not need the government to teach them how to think. The decree sets out very broad categories of speech that officials could consider as troublesome. It includes warnings about information that is against Vietnam or undermines certain principles. Sean Crispin is the Southeast Asia representative for the Committee to Protect Journalists, or CPJ. He says the increased restrictions suggest that the government thinks it has lost control of the criticism that is so widespread on social media. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Tokelau is a group of small islands in the South Pacific Ocean. Officials now say they have become the world's first territory totally powered by the sun. The move to solar energy is expected to save money and ease the environmental burden of depending on imported fossil fuels. New Zealand's Foreign Affairs Minister, Murray McCully, announced the Tokelau Renewable Energy Project. He said Tokelau's 3 main atolls, or islands, now have enough solar capacity to meet all of their electricity needs. He said Tokelau had been completely dependent on diesel fuel for producing electricity. That burdened the territory with heavy economic and environmental costs. Tokelau is about halfway between New Zealand and Hawaii. The self-administering territory of New Zealand has about 1,500 citizens. Each atoll received its own solar power grid system. New Zealand officials estimate the cost of the project to be about $7 million. The last of the grids was completed earlier this month. Oil imports are a big cost in some parts of the Pacific. The move to solar power could save Tokelau about $1 million a year. One project coordinator said Tokelau would now be able to spend more on social programs to help its citizens. Other South Pacific islands are attempting similar projects.